Greetings, beloved. I'm Bishop R.G. Mason II, lead pastor of the Impact Church South. And I'd like to take this time to invite you to worship with us in our iChurch worship experience. Many people have been asking the question, what does the I stand for in iChurch? Well, I stands for Impact. That's who we are. But listen, Impact is not just a word. It's an acronym. It's not just a designation of who we are, but it's a description of what we are. We are innovative ministries productively addressing current times. And one of the ways we're addressing the current times is that we are bringing you prophetic services to minister to you right where you are. We told you many, many times before, when you come to the Impact Church, it's going to be an experience. So listen, I need you to get ready, sit back and wait. God's about to meet you at the very point of your need, and you're about to experience an impact. Well, that's enough of that. I tell you what, let's just go in and worship together. I'm going to go in physically. You're going to come in virtually. Grace and peace. Kings chapter 3, and we will consider verse number 9. And it reads, and this is Solomon talking back to God when God has asked Solomon to ask him whatever he would that God do for him. And here is Solomon's response. He says, "Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?" And for a little while, I want to continue to talk from this series of messages. I need a strategy. Now, if that's you and you know you're in a point in your life where you need God to show you what to do because you have no clue of what you're supposed to do or how to get it done, rather, I want you to say these prophetic words with me. I need a strategy. Would you drop that in the chat if you're watching virtually? I need a strategy. Father, give me grace to minister this under your power. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. One of the most unequivocal, unwavering, but yet unsettling truths about our lives is that it's going to be filled with transition. In fact, the saints of old said it like this: time is filled with swift transition. None on earth unmoved can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold on to God's unchanging hands. And what this suggests is that sometimes transition will quickly come one on the heels of another. See, the reality is, Pastor Clark, your life is a sum total of a series of transitions that you've survived. And you're always leaving one chapter of transition behind while you're leaping into the other transitional chapter that's ahead. Okay, I threw that at you. Let me see, can I hit you because you ducked the first time? What this suggests to you and I is that transitions are going to be common. It has a common purpose, and it does not waver, and it has no respecter of persons. It has no particular person it's partial to and impartial to. It's common for everybody, but transitions are not only common, but they are consistent, which means they flow free of interruption. But then not only are transitions common and consistent, but they are consecutive because they seem to immediately follow one after the other. I remember a couple of years ago, I was on my sick bed and God spoke to me and said, "Son, what you're going through is necessary for where I'm taking you." I asked God, "What are you saying?" He said, "You are in the midst of transition. And sometimes I've got to use transitional periods to push you from one place to the next." And God told me to share with you from the revelation of my situation that that's the same thing he's doing with some of you. Because God will send transitional periods into your life because he's either attempting to take you into something or God is attempting to take you away from something. And in order to ensure that we stay true to God's divine trajectory, he sends transitions to transport us from one place to the next. Now, transitions now is simply movement and development or an evolution from one stage style to the next. Because when transitions come, they move you from one place and position and purpose unto the next. And although transitions would differ according to what's being done, it always seems to carry the same general connotation. It comes to create movement in your life. Because regardless of who you are, if you're not where you were and you're not where you're supposed to be, it means that you're either in the in-between stage of transitioning or you're smack dab in the middle of transition, because transitions come to keep us advancing. Because sometimes, Ashley, we have a tendency to relish the old but simultaneously resist the new. And sometimes God has to take you away from something in order to push you into something. And it's our inability to detach from the old things that sometimes keep us from attaching to a new thing. And God says sometimes I've got to snatch you away just to shift you into. Can I pull them to the side of the road and put the car in park and step out and have a conversation and tell you whatever you won't walk away from for God will eventually walk away from you because of God. Okay, you missed this. Stop, rewind, play. Either you start walking or stuff is going to stop working. And God told me sometimes you can walk away angry when you could have walked away amicable, but the choice was yours. But because you didn't walk away when you were supposed to, ultimately things did not work out the way God had planned them to. And this has very little to do with the lesson. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But God told me to tell you there are those who are no longer in your life and places that no longer are a part of your life that didn't have to leave your life, but you've refused to transition in your life. So God said I had to come and step in, and I had to trouble the waters in order to push you from one place to the next. I'm preaching then to people on tonight that understands that if you're going to have something different in this life, you've got to be willing to do something different in this life in order to get something you've never had. Vadina, you've got to be willing to do something you've never done. And in order to maintain what you've gained, you've got to keep doing what you did to galvanize what you've already gotten. And in this season, Natasha, recording artist, God told me to tell you, you're going to have to discern and develop and defend the plan of God for your life. But you can't defend what you can't develop. And you can't develop what you can't discern. You've got to find out why I'm still here in this season and what I'm supposed to be doing in this season and who is supposed to be doing it with me, because I have no time to waste. I have wasted too much time. God, I need to move according to the design and the plan you have for my life. Can I talk about a plan for a moment? See, a plan is designed to work in conjunction with performance. It's one thing to have a plan, and we know God has a plan, Jonah, for all of our lives. In Jeremiah 29:11, he said, for I know the thoughts I think towards you, thoughts of peace and not evil, to bring you into an expected. I got a plan for your life, but a plan is designed to work in conjunction with performance. In other words, guys, God is not going to do anything for you without you, but God's going to partner with you in order to get done through you the stuff he's called you to do. I told you on the last setting that success is never serendipitous. $25 worth of words with 25-cent meaning. We simply said, you don't just wake up and be successful. You've got to do something in order to have something. You've got to have a combination of desire, development, and deployment. In Luke's Gospel 14:28, the writer said, for which of you intending to build a tower, sit it down, not first and count it the cost, whether you have sufficient to finish it. In layman's terms, he said, how many people are just going to haphazardly jump into something without thinking about it and without planning what you're going to do in order to be successful in doing it? And many of us have the desire. Some of us have the drive, but very few of us have the design. And this is especially true, guys, with those of us who are so-called spiritual. You know the type. We so heavenly minded. We know earthly good. Can we talk like we're family? You ever ran into the kind of folk that look like they just left heaven long enough to come to church and gonna take a cloud back to heaven when church over? You know the one I'm talking about. They can't talk to you in English because they too busy speaking in tongues. You know the one. They can't even answer your question because they got to pray about it. You want to go out to eat? Let me pray about it. What? You got to pray about chicken? You know the type. They can't hold down the job because they say holding down the job gonna hinder my prayer time. So I'm going full time. Can we talk like we family for a moment? What is it that when you get saved and called to ministry, you get lazy? Looks like working for the Lord ought to make you laborious and not lazy. What's going on, Deacon Kenneth Smith? See, doing ministry does not alleviate us of the responsibility to create separate streams of independent income to support our family. In fact, Paul said, a man that doesn't take care of his house is worse than an infidel. And that's a non-believer, somebody that don't even believe in God. Man, if you ain't taking care of your woman, you ain't taking care of your children, you're not handling your responsibilities, you are worse than an unbeliever. Sometimes church has a tendency to utilize spiritualism in situations that calls for pragmatism. In other words, sometimes, here it is, Natalie, we don't need a miracle in order for it to be supernaturally worked out. We need a strategy so we can naturally walk it out. Sometimes God just wants me to put my mind into it and put my strength into it, put my hands up on it. Can I tell you, you can't always live off the loaves. You want a miracle every day? Aren't you tired of going and filling out the application, speaking in tongues? But man, when you pay your bills and that credit score increases and your credit file is right, you don't have to speak in tongues. You can tell them what you want your particular percentage rate to be. Okay, y'all got quiet. Okay, here it is. But sometimes, guys, we spiritualize what we are to pragmatize. And so there are times when God will allow certain people and places in our lives, I told you, to be removed and that should have remained in proximity. But you and I would not change positions, so he had to change proximity. However, because of this, we ended up giving up something that when we should have gained something. Can we talk one more time like we're family? Here is the question: has God ever had you to give up something you didn't want to give up? But because you didn't give it up, he snatched it away. I remember before I went full-time ministry, I was working for a company called Airborne Express. Now it's called DHL. I was making $25 an hour. Back in that day, that was good money. This was in the late 80s and the early 90s. And so I was working there. And I remember I was riding with Pastor Jay one night. Pastor Jay had always been spiritual and hooping and preaching. She was a demon. But anyway, listen. So I'm riding with her one night, Clark, and I look over to her. I say, listen, God told me to go full-time ministry. The chick busts out crying. I said, Lord, I got Job's wife with me. I said, Liz, what the matter? She said, we gonna starve. Her exact word. She's right there. Her exact word. Now I need you to get this, guys. And so what happened was, what had happened was I didn't do it. I delayed it. Now, all the time of being on the job, I had a pristine driving record. I would get awards every year for my driving record. And so the next day, God said, put in your 2-week notice. I started thinking about, we gonna starve. I don't want to starve. I don't want to be, So I didn't do it. What happens now is I get a ticket. And so I have to come in and turn the ticket in because, again, they're going to see my record. I turn the ticket in. And God said, turn in your 2-week notice. Veronica, the next day I come in and drive again. I said, God, I can't do it. I don't want to start. I get another ticket. Next day I come in. God said, turn in your 2. I don't want to start. I get a third, 3 days in a row. And when I walked into the office, they said, you got a choice. You can resign or we got to fire you. See, the reality is this. Just when you thought I was talking about Airborne Express, my job, my tickets, my Job kind of wife, I was trying to tell you that there are times in your life when God will make you give up what you have presently so he can take you where he wants you to go progressively. And you can look at me and tell I ain't been starving. I'm living better than I've ever lived before because I gave up what was in my past so I can gain what is in my, I don't know who I came to prophesy to. God said, I've got more ahead of you than you are trying to hold on to behind you. Here it is. Here it is. Here is my problem. My problem was not that I didn't trust God per se. Now, trust is an acronym, totally reliant upon spiritual truths. It's when I know what he said and I'm standing on the foundation of what he's already said. But see, that's not always my problem. Clark, my problem sometimes is not what he told me to do. It's not even when he tells me to do it. It's me not knowing how I'm supposed to get it done. And so here is where we find ourselves tonight within this frequent flux called a pandemic. And it is this type of involuntary ignorance that causes you and I to remain stuck when we're supposed to shift from one place to the next. And this is because we know what he says needs to be done, but we don't have a strategy to get it done. And that's why we are standing in concert on tonight saying, God, we know what you told us to do. We know we've got to do something different, but we need a strategy in order to get it done. What if I told you that you were one strategy away from having everything you needed to happen in your life? I told you the word strategy comes from a Greek word strategia. It's a plan of action. It's a policy designed to achieve long-term goals under conditions of uncertainty. Here it is. Here comes the shout. Lucretia, here comes the shout. A strategy does not come until conditions are uncertain. And you trip because you can't figure stuff out. God said, I don't let you figure stuff out so I can give you a strategy to work it out. He said, man, I got you right where I want you. I got you in a position where you got to worship. I got you in a position where you so broken, you got to pray. I got you in a position where ain't nothing working. So you got to lean and depend on me. Man, one of your favorite scriptures right now is trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. In all his ways acknowledge him so he can direct your path. Have you ever been there? Well, man, you just had no idea of what to do. Here it is. A strategy, I told you, is an acronym. Systems that regiment a technique ensuring growth and yield, which simply means this. My strategy ought to stretch me. If it's comfortable, it's not a strategy. A strategy is a delayed plan. Watch this. A dream. Well, watch this. A dream is a delayed reality eagerly awaiting manifestation. That's an acronym. Watch this. So if it was not a dream, it would be called a reality. But by the mere fact that you can't see it, it's called a dream. Well, a strategy comes to partner with your dreams in order to bring what's in your future into your present. And so a strategy is like a divine lasso. It ropes around what's ahead of you, pulls what's ahead of you in front of you so you can walk into it. Here was the problem though. Many times we don't know what we're supposed to do. So we don't know how to do it. And it's one thing to not know how to do it, but it's another thing entirely to not know what you are supposed to do. So God told me to tell you this. He said, by the mere fact that a strategy does not focus so much on where you are, but where you are going, it suggests that a strategy is never intended to be permanent. It's temporal. In the field of cryptocurrency, when we are making transactions on the blockchain, what happens is there are some hot storage wallets that have multiple addresses. I know I'm talking over your head a little bit. All I'm trying to tell you is there are codes. There's an alphanumerical code that you got to put in that becomes a wallet address, and you are able to make transactions, digital transactions of digital currency. I'm trying to break it down as much as I can. But here is the point I'm trying to make here. What happens is, Kenny, is whenever I forget to change the code, the transaction is not void. It just goes to an old place that I no longer have access to. You're going to catch this after a while. And so what I've got to do is every time, Bennett, I make a transaction, I got to go in and change the address. And that's what a strategy does. It makes you change the address of what you did last time so God can give you something relevant for this time. Somebody shout, I'm tired. Somebody type, I'm tired of sending new stuff to an old address. Here it is. So in this textual tapestry of truth, lest to hold you long, we find that there is a newly selected sovereign by the name of Solomon who's in a position that he did not prepare for, and now he needs a strategy in order to properly perform. So when God appears to him, he gives him the opportunity to ask for anything. Now I need to help you here, man. If you're going to ask for something in this season, don't ask for a car. A car will depreciate in value. Don't ask for a house. That may begin to depreciate if you don't take care of it. Don't ask for money. That can depreciate according to how the stock market or the fluctuation of the rate of money. But you need to ask for something that supersedes things that are inanimate objects that depreciate. Here it is, celebrity. You need a strategy. Man, if I get a strategy, I'll get me a car. If I get a strategy, I can get me a house. If I get a strategy, I can get me some money. All I need is a strategy. Solomon could ask for anything, but he decides to ask for one thing, a strategy. And because he asked God for the right thing, God decides to give him everything. You do know Solomon. We talked about him last week. Solomon, the son of David and Bathsheba. Now, just in case you think your background's messed up, I know you ain't like me. Everybody can't be from the Cooper Road. You from Cedar Grove and Motown and you just all jacked up. I know. You didn't go to Green Oaks. Listen, but just in case you went to one of these subpar schools, old raggedy hood you from, you are no worse than Solomon. Solomon's parents were adulterers. You're no worse than Solomon. Solomon was born from a jacked up situation. You are no worse than, and I don't know who this is for, because some of y'all feel like Bathsheba and you feel like you don't have a right, and you feel like your past is going to mess up your present and what God wants to do for you progressively. Let me help you. In Proverbs 31, there was a man by the name of King Lemuel, which is a pseudonym for King Solomon. He writes about his mama called a virtuous woman, and that same woman in Proverbs 31 is the same woman, Bathsheba, who sinned with David. Oh, don't you tell me God can't erase your past and give you a brighter future. Don't you tell me God can't look beyond your faults and see your needs. He's David's successor. He's the third king of Israel. He's that dude that had 1,000 women. He's the author of Proverbs, Song of Solomon, and some suggest Ecclesiastes. His name in the Hebrew is Shalomah, where we get the Hebrew word shalom, where we get the English word peace and safety, welfare. He's called Jedediah. Jedediah means the beloved of God. But here he is, after all of his accolades, in a position where he has to do something for God, but it requires that he gets something from God. And that's a strategy. And here it is, guys. It's called a Solomonic strategy. A Solomonic strategy is a divine plan from God that shows you what to do after you admit that you don't know what you're doing. Now, at first glance, guys, the text seems to present an ancestral anachronism that raises a quadrant of questions, because we see Solomon sitting on the throne of David without being numerically designated. Now, that's $25 with the words with 25-cent meaning. It said things are out of order because Solomon is a successor, but he's not supposed to have the position. Absalom should have had it, but he was killed by Joab. Amnon should have had it, but he was killed by Absalom. Adonijah should have had it because he had the birthing order. But what God does is put Solomon in front of Adonijah. I want you to hear this, because when God has a plan for your life, it does not matter who's in front of you. God will require sometimes people in front of you to get behind you, to push you where you're supposed to be, because his grace and his plan and his design for your life is calling you to the front while you're trying to hide in the back. I don't know who I'm stopping to prophesy to on this live or in this sanctuary. You've been trying to hide in the backyard like David, but God said if he got to go through 7 other brothers just to find you, he's about to call you from the back to the front in order to do what you were born to do. But I know what you're saying. I don't have the prowess, but you're about to have the position. I don't have the degree, but you're about to get the duties. I don't have the training, but you're about to have the title. And here it is. It's because what he's calling you to do in this season is too much for you to do by yourself, which is why he's about to partner with you to work through you in order to get done what you have been called to do. We told you on the last time we came together that in chapter 1 we find where Solomon is giving legacy out of loyalty. Y'all don't mind if I pull out my textual leash and walk a didactic dog from chapter 1 to chapter 3, do you? We see in chapter 2 where Solomon is guided on who is supposed to be a leader, but now not how to lead. See, David dies without having time for demonstration. Let me tell you what that means. It means he had a daddy who was a king, but his daddy didn't have time to tell him how to be a king. And sometimes God will eliminate any human example so he can be your divine example. Has God ever refused to let you get with other folk and had to get you by yourself to show you what he wanted you to do so you wouldn't get contaminated by the people you were trying to connect to? Sometimes that's what God would do. In chapter 2, Solomon gains the lives of those who were not loyal. In chapter 3, Solomon gets a late night visit from the Lord. Please don't miss this, because here's where we are in the text. The Lord comes to him in a dream while he is in Gibeon. Gibeon in the Hebrew tongue means the hilltop or the high place. It means he is in worship. He's in Gibeon, and he's not there because of privilege, but he's there because of where he is positioned. Now, I need you to understand. Here's what God told me. He said, notice I visited Solomon in Gibeon. Okay, God, what does that mean? He says, Gibeon is the high place. He said, notice I visited him in the high place where he worshiped. Clark, you ain't got this yet. I'm going to say it again. Stop, rewind, play. Notice I visited Solomon in Gibeon, in the high place where he worshiped. I didn't visit him in a low place where he was worrying. Oh, you're going to get this after a while. God is not showing up to your pity party. God said, I will only come when you come up to the high place. As long as you want to stay down here, you will be by yourself. But I need somebody in virtual, somebody in the sanctuary that'll lift up your hands and release a sound. Lift up your head, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. He is the King of glory. Here it is. Roshekanda Roskabaya. He Reshekata. Roshamama. Why you speaking in time? I'm going to the high place. Roshitananama. Why you lifting your hand? I'm going to the high place. Why you pray? I'm going to the high place. He's going to visit me in the high place. Here it is. Here it is. So the lesson suggests that whenever you're selected to do a work for God, man, I'm talking to these elder elects and these minister elects and these pastor elects. You better hear me. I don't care if you pass your test or not. You better hear this. I don't care if you pass catechism or not. You better hear this. Whenever you are selected to do a work for God, you better seek the wisdom of God. God, is this the season I need to be elevated? Am I ready to handle this responsibility? Can I move with wisdom and agility like I need to do what you want me to do? I need your wisdom. Roshata Yamando Robosha. Here's what God told me to tell you. The next work will require wisdom. I don't care how skillful you are. I don't care how educated you are. The next work will require wisdom. You've been operating off of prudence, your mental intelligence, to know how to discern and decipher. But God said in this season, you need wisdom. You need me to divinely tell you what to do in situations that befuddle you. So inquiring minds asking the question, preacher, what is it that I need to do to get my strategy? Please afford me the homiletic latitude to pull out my hermeneutical rifle. I'm going to see, can I chase me an exegetical rabbit that I see within the text? I'm going to chase that rabbit from verse 2. But next week, I'm going to catch him in verse 8. Please don't miss this. Here's the first and the last one I'm giving you tonight. These are the lessons that can be learned from the sagacity of Solomon. Before he ever sought a strategy, he made sure that his rendering was reasonable. You may want to write that on the screen. Make sure that your rendering is beyond reasonable. Please, I said was reasonable. Excuse me, beyond reasonable. I'm going to say it one more time. His rendering was beyond reasonable. It's going to make sense in a minute. Look at the second verse. The second verse in 1 Kings chapter 3. Here is Solomon getting him a strategy. Here's what you got to do. He said, only the people sacrificed in high places, because there was no house built unto the name of the Lord unto those days. And Solomon loved God, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and burned incense in high places. And the king went to Gibeon, the high place, to sacrifice there, for there was a great high place. And look what he did, guys. He says, when I go to worship, I'm coming for real. I'm going to make sure my rendering is beyond reasonable. You got to get this. In that day, their worship was sacrificing Vadina on an altar. In our day, our worship is making ourselves a sacrifice, and wherever we are becomes an altar. And so, in other words, when you come into the house of God, or whether you're in your own house, you ought to be giving God a sacrifice called yourself. Look what he does. He gives 1,000 burnt offerings and offers it upon the altar. Now, there's something about your worship that makes God want to start working. In fact, the scripture says he inhabits the praises of his people. I know you thought it was a scripture, but it was just a song. When praises go up, blessings come. That sound good, but it ain't Bible. See, here's the reality, Jenkins. My praise does not go up to make blessings come down. My praise goes up to make God come down. When it say he inhabits, which means when I praise God, he shows up in my situation. So he's not worshiping to impress anybody. He knows he's at a high place. And he's trying to get the attention of the Most High God. He's saying, God, you want me to work? You better show up. I need you. It's not by accident, guys, that God visits him after he sacrificed. Because your worship should be so sacrificial that it has blood on it. And when I say blood, I mean it cuts you to the degree where it makes you uncomfortable. If your worship does not make you uncomfortable, it's not moving God. But when you worship and you do it from a place of sacrifice, it gets the attention of God. And man, we spend more time focusing on what we look like and what we say, trying to get the attention of others, but we do very little to get the attention of God. When was the last time you said, I'm coming in here to get God's attention today? When was the last time you built an altar in your car, built an altar at your job, built an altar in your bedroom and say, I'm getting the attention of God today? I'm closing. And so Solomon understands something that we have gotten twisted, because we think men want something from us. And so we keep our hands closed and most times come empty-handed. But Solomon understood something. I can't come empty-handed. In fact, at your leisure, read 1 Samuel 9 and 6. When Saul's father's asses or donkeys were lost, he goes to visit the prophet Samuel. He says, man, I cannot go to the prophet empty-handed. He said, here I have in my hand 1/4 of a shekel of a piece of silver that I may give to the man of God that he may tell me my way. See, some of us want to come to God empty-handed and leave full-fisted. But God said, I ain't putting nothing in your fist. If you can't give me anything out of your hand, man, God help me, I'm a preacher. And preachers are the worst offenders at this. We are the biggest takers, but we're the worst givers. We want to receive from people under us, but we don't release to nobody above us. And every pastor watching this live, if you your own pastor, you got a fool for a pastor. You need somebody to speak into your life, somebody you can sow into, somebody who can tell you what to do. I dare not stand in front of y'all and tell y'all what to do if I don't have a man of God telling me what to do. If I can't sit under somebody, I'm not worthy to stand over anybody. And I am not, play softly, son, I am not suggesting that your worship and your sacrifice is your ability to try to pay God for what he's done. Man, you can't pay God for what he's done, but you ought to bless him because of what he's done. You want a strategy? Give him a seed. I told you last week, you want a strategy? Give him a seed. You want a strategy? Give him a seed. And although you can't pay him, you can provoke him. And family, I'm at a season in my life. I've wasted enough time. I need to provoke God to do some stuff for me. I need to provoke God to create streams for me that's going to help me get done easier what would have taken me more effort and time had he not stepped in. I need a strategy. I need him to give me a plan so I can have victory sweatless. I need him to give me a plan that's going to supersede my natural and humanistic ability and power to get stuff done supernaturally.
Wow, wasn't that an experience? Didn't I tell you? I thought I told you. I should have told you that every time you come to the Impact Church, you're going to experience what we have coined as the 3 R's. Yes, our services are rated R. It's real, it is relevant, and it is raw. Well, listen, beloved, we thank God that you chose to worship with us on today. We look forward to worshiping with you again very soon at the same time, at the same channel, but it won't be the same experience, we promise you. Thank you so much. Grace and peace.